My beloved child, before your lips even formed the prayer, before your knees ever touched the ground in desperation, I had already dispatched a heavenly messenger on your behalf, but you didn't recognize it. This is your wake-up moment. This is the second your soul needs to tremble, because the very help you've been screaming for has been standing closer than the air around you. I didn't wait for you to scream for rescue. I responded the moment your heart whispered for help. Before your crisis had a name, before your mind fully understood the pain you were walking into, I sent an angel ahead of you to pave a path through it. This miracle was never delayed. It was in motion while you were still collapsing under the weight of confusion. While people turned their backs on you, while you were questioning who to trust, while you were blaming yourself for everything that went wrong, I had already commissioned a being from heaven's throne to walk before you and disrupt every evil plot. You thought I was silent. You thought nothing was happening. But silence isn't absence. Hidden doesn't mean forgotten. My movements don't always come with loud thunder. Sometimes, I operate in quiet obedience to the cries of your soul. And that's what I did. You had no idea the very moment you thought you were being punished, I was already orchestrating protection. You didn't feel a breakthrough, because I was shielding you from the breakdown. You couldn't see the answer, because I had to blindfold you long enough to carry you past every trap that was meant to take your breath away. You've been walking with sorrow, unaware that a miracle has been walking alongside it, waiting to be revealed. But now I remove the veil. Now I speak loud. Now I say it clear. The angel assigned to your situation is already here. The instruction was given. The mission is in motion. The resistance will regret ever challenging what I've sealed in the supernatural. This isn't just hope. It's heaven's announcement. You are not standing where you are by chance. You are standing in a moment that prophecy prepared, a divine junction where everything changes because the messenger I sent didn't stop until it reached your timeline. You didn't feel it because your feelings aren't the final authority, my word is. And my word has already been walking ahead of you, dismantling curses, unlocking barriers, silencing accusers, and creating opportunity in places no human could touch. And while you wept thinking you were alone, my angel walked right past the enemy that tried to mark your name for failure. You still don't realize the death that passed over you, the rejection that was rerouted, the depression that lifted, the snare that snapped in half, because of a messenger I sent ahead of your need. So no, child, you were never abandoned. You were covered. You were carried. You were cradled by glory even in your most fragile hour. And now that the moment is near for what has been hidden to be released, I urge you, don't look around for signs of comfort. Look within for signals of faith. Your angel does not operate on your calendar. He operates on my command. And that command was already released before your questions were even formed. Get ready, because the miracle you're about to see didn't begin when you asked. It began when I said go. And the one I sent never turned back. You believed your sorrow was hidden, locked in rooms no one could enter, behind walls built from heartbreak and disappointment, but I saw every moment. The tears you released silently onto your pillow were not ignored. They were collected. While you whispered fears into the darkness, my kingdom was already preparing a counterattack. Your isolation was not a sign of abandonment, it was the shelter where I whispered secret instructions to angels on your behalf. Every breath you exhaled in despair echoed in the halls of heaven louder than thunder. And while you were convinced you had no audience, you had the attention of armies. In your aloneness, you thought nothing was shifting. But I want you to know, the very moment your voice cracked beneath the weight of sorrow, divine reinforcements had already broken through realms to reach you. Not because you begged, not because you performed, but because you are mine. I do not wait until you are seen by others before I act. I move the instant your heart aches in ways no human can interpret. You shut doors to protect yourself, but heaven doesn't knock, it invades. Your cry summoned a movement not visible to earthly sight, but powerful enough to dismantle what was sent to destroy you. While you wept in secret, your help traveled dimensions. And the reason you didn't feel the shift instantly is because some breakthroughs begin underground, rooted deep where eyes can't see but where faith begins to breathe. That's why you felt nothing changing at first. I was building beneath the surface of your silence. And when others overlooked your pain because you smiled in public, I was sending restoration through a realm untouched by man's timing. You wondered why I didn't respond in a flash, but my help isn't momentary. I don't patch, I rebuild. The assistance I sent wasn't to make you comfortable for a day. It was dispatched to rebuild your destiny from the roots up. While you questioned whether I cared, my messengers were blocking bullets, diverting disasters, and assigning miracles to your coordinates. What you thought was a delay was actually protection while I cleared the area for safe delivery. I refused to allow the promise to arrive where poison still lingers. That's why I delayed the visible proof, because I care about permanent freedom, not temporary relief. And now, while you are still wiping away the residue of unanswered prayers, the fulfillment is knocking louder than your doubt. You assumed that crying in secret made you weak, but in my realm, that was intercession. You weren't breaking down. You were birthing breakthrough. You didn't fall apart in vain. Every drop of emotion was a seed I watered in my courts. I'm not a distant observer, I am an involved father. And while the world kept scrolling past your pain, I stopped time to orchestrate rescue. You just didn't see it coming because it was designed to surprise every lie spoken over your life. The help I released was never supposed to be predictable, it was engineered to embarrass every expectation of failure. And now, child, your room of sorrow is about to become the sanctuary of your miracle. The very atmosphere where you thought nothing holy could grow is being transformed into a stage for glory. But don't get comfortable in this place of tears, I'm about to interrupt it. My help is not coming to sit with you in pain. It's coming to pull you out of it entirely. And though it may not arrive wearing the image you imagined, it carries the exact instructions I whispered. Trust this. Your cry summoned a war you didn't witness, and heaven answered before you even knew you needed saving. There's something you must understand now, and I need you to grasp it with the full weight of heaven's urgency. What didn't arrive when you expected wasn't a rejection, it was strategic withholding for multiplied impact. I never said no. I said not yet, because the room you wanted me to walk into wasn't built to hold what I was about to release. If I had granted your request when you first pleaded, you would have received something that would eventually collapse under pressure. You thought the silence meant I dismissed you, but I was actually expanding your container for overflow. You were prepared for survival, but I was preparing you for a flood of redemption that would not just change your life but shake every realm connected to you. What seemed like a pause was not passive. It was power in preparation. I was aligning people you didn't know, creating openings that didn't exist, removing access from those who would have misused the very blessing you begged me to send. The timing felt cruel, but I was shielding you from counterfeit outcomes. The place you thought you belonged to couldn't carry the version of you I was developing in the delay. And if I had given it too soon, you would have settled for less than my design. You assumed I forgot. You even accused me in your thoughts of holding back what you deserve, but what if I told you I was protecting the promise from being mishandled? I saw traps inside your wishes. I saw deception dressed in opportunity. I saw relationships that would have consumed your purpose if I allowed them to come closer. So I withheld, not out of punishment, but because love doesn't hand a match to someone standing in gasoline. You were begging for speed, but I was establishing depth. You wanted open doors, but I was reinforcing your foundation so that when the right door opened, no storm could shut it. That's why it took longer. I wasn't just answering your petition, I was rewriting your legacy. I was canceling generational patterns that were camouflaged as normal. I was undoing cycles hidden behind tradition. I was creating a moment that no man could claim credit for. You asked for fast, but I destined you for strong. So I made you wait, not to harm, but to heal. Not to tease, but to train. And now you're standing at the edge of that holy moment, where what was stalled is now speeding toward you with divine velocity. Because once I say it's time, no demon, no delay, no deception can interfere. My command overrides every natural protocol. What was on pause is now in pursuit. And the beauty is, when it arrives, you won't just receive it, you'll be ready to steward it. Your capacity is different now. You're no longer desperate for anything. You're aligned with what is sent by me. And that's the miracle of divine delay. It transforms you so that you don't sabotage the very thing you cried for. You are not the same person who started this journey. You've been refined by fire, not burned by it. You've been shaped by stillness, not abandoned in it. And now, the glory that's about to be unveiled will silence every mocking voice, including the ones that echoed from within you. So don't resent the timing. Bless it. Because it didn't rob you, it prepared you to receive the kind of abundance you once feared you weren't worthy of. This is the hour where wait turns into watch, and heaven unveils what was never denied, only divinely reserved. What came against you wasn't meant to destroy, it was permitted to shape the vessel that would carry my glory. You saw the walls rise and thought they were built to cage you, but they were scaffolding for a testimony that only pressure could prepare. Every barrier, every closed path, every unexpected detour wasn't meant to stop you, it was carefully woven into the fabric of your becoming. I didn't allow the attacks to punish you. I allowed them to produce something far more valuable than convenience: endurance. You wouldn't have discovered your hidden strength if the road had been smooth. You wouldn't have cried out to me with such fire if everything had gone according to your plan. You would have settled for a version of your life too small for your destiny. So I used the very resistance that threatened to break you as the training ground to build you. The stones thrown at you became stepping platforms. The insults you endured ignited clarity. The moments of betrayal turned into keys that unlocked new awareness. You thought it was chaos, but I was orchestrating a breakthrough disguised as difficulty. I never waste affliction. What you thought was random suffering was part of a holy arrangement. While others only saw you stumbling, I saw you shedding old layers. At disappointment, it stripped away your attachment to Jaupal. At rejection, it severed the unhealthy alliances draining your potential. At long night when sleep wouldn't come, it forged prayers from your spirit that shook atmospheres. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a child of strategy. Every battle was filtered through my mercy before it ever touched you. I allowed just enough pressure to refine, but never enough to destroy. Because through it all, I was holding what you couldn't see: the blueprint. The long route you feared was failure was actually the only road that could align your heart with heaven's tempo. I wasn't just making a way, I was making you into someone who could handle what's coming. You begged me to remove the obstacle, but I used it to reveal what was dormant inside you: strength, vision, resilience, authority. Not because you're immune to weakness, but because you kept walking even when your legs trembled. You kept praying even when your voice cracked. You kept believing even when hope looked foolish. And that is the preparation the miracle needed. I couldn't send something weighty into hands that hadn't been trained to hold it. I couldn't release favor without fire. And now, because you didn't collapse under what was supposed to crush you, I'm clearing the path for elevation you didn't see coming. The obstacles weren't punishment, they were announcement. They declared to the realm of darkness that you are marked, you are anointed, and you are unstoppable in me. And the very giants that once mocked your progress will now become landmarks of how far you've come. I will make your past battles part of the prophecy others will witness. This is how I operate, taking what tried to break you and flipping it into the bridge that carries you straight into fulfillment. So don't despise what didn't move when you pushed. Don't curse what seemed immovable. That resistance made you ready. That weight gave you wings. And now, what once stood in the way is being pushed aside, because the one who endured the fire without quitting has now been authorized to walk into what I had sealed for this hour. There were moments when the answer hovered right above your reach, not because I was teasing your faith, but because the miracle's weight required a maturity that could not be rushed. You asked me why it hadn't arrived yet, not realizing I had already dispatched the one assigned to bring it, but the angel's movement was bound to the readiness of your spirit. What I prepared for you wasn't meant to land in a posture of panic. It was destined to rest in a soul strengthened by trust. Your miracle couldn't be dropped into instability. It had to descend into alignment. You were asking for breakthrough, but I was watching for surrender. Until your heart was no longer tied to control, until your motives were not driven by fear, until your hands released what they were clinging to in desperation, I instructed the angel to wait. Not to withhold the blessing, but to preserve its purity. I will never send what's holy into chaos. I will not permit divine intervention to collide with confusion birthed from anxiety. There were days you begged for a shift, unaware that internally, you were still trying to force outcomes I never endorsed. You weren't delayed by darkness, you were being developed in the waiting room of grace. And when you finally laid down your timelines, when you chose stillness over striving, that's when the atmosphere began to shift. The angel didn't need more information, it needed your yes. Not a surface-level yes, but a full body, all in surrender that silenced every argument inside of you. It's the posture that gave the green light. That's what released the movement you're now beginning to feel. Your readiness wasn't about perfection, it was about position. When you stopped measuring yourself by what others had, when you stopped thinking the delay was punishment, when you stopped doubting my intentions, that's when the path became clear. You've always had access. What you didn't realize was that access doesn't mean arrival, it means invitation. And the angel carrying your miracle couldn't enter until the invitation was genuine, free from manipulation, free from conditions, free from fear. That's why it didn't come earlier. Because this wasn't a delivery, it was an encounter. And now that you step out of the shallow waters of reaction and into the deep river of trust, what was paused has now been set into motion. You were being shaped by unseen hands, and I waited for that shaping to be complete before I gave the signal. My angel obeys my voice, not your urgency. It follows divine instruction, not human desperation. But now the environment has shifted. The door is open. The atmosphere is cleared. The internal battles have begun to lose power. And because your spirit has yielded, the delivery can no longer be delayed. What was hovering is descending. What was circling is now landing. And it's not just bringing provision, it's bringing divine recognition. You will know it wasn't random. You will sense that this was never just about what you were waiting for. It was about who you were becoming while you waited. And now, the one I sent will not just visit you, will host the miraculous. Because you didn't demand it, you prepared for it. And what's coming is not fragile, it's fortified. What's arriving is not temporary, it's tested. What's unfolding is not just favor, it's fulfillment. You thought the pain passed unnoticed, buried in silence, unseen by any living soul, but I was there, present in every trembling breath, recording each drop that fell from eyes too exhausted to explain. You didn't need to speak. Your anguish was loud in the spirit. While others were too busy to ask how you were truly doing, I was watching every moment you broke down behind locked doors, when even your own voice betrayed you. Nothing was wasted. Not one teardrop went unnoticed in my courts. I didn't just see them, I honored them. I marked them with my compassion and sealed them in the vault of remembrance. Every collapse into your pillow was not a moment of weakness, it was a cry of war in heaven's hearing. The world overlooked your suffering because you wore strength like a disguise. But I looked past the surface and beheld the shattering underneath. I watched you carry burdens too heavy for one heart. Yet you still walked forward, still whispered hope, still chose kindness when all you wanted was to scream. That is sacred to me. I don't ignore agony. I record it. I number each sorrow, not as tally marks of your breakdowns, but as sacred evidence of your endurance. You didn't know this, but those tears carried instructions. Every drop that fell held divine information that activated movement in the spiritual realm. It wasn't just grief, it was intercession too deep for language. And because I am not distant, I respond to what others dismiss. You wept thinking you were alone, but I was holding your soul in places even you couldn't reach. You assumed your breaking was hidden, but it triggered the arrival of restoration. Your tears moved angels into position. While your body trembled, I wrapped you in strength the world couldn't see. And now, everything that once overwhelmed you is being rearranged in your favor, not because you fought, but because you wept in surrender. I take those moments seriously. The nights you wish someone would just understand. I understood. The mornings when your chest felt too tight to rise. I lifted you. When you cried and felt numb, when you pressed your face into your hands and whispered, "I can't do this," I answered you with grace that carried you through that very day. And I'm still responding. Because I am the God who numbers sorrows and transforms them into songs. I never mocked your pain. I never told you to hide it. I sat with you in it. And every tear you released in the shadows is about to produce beauty in the light. That's how I work. I turn mourning into movement. I convert despair into destiny. I take the water from your eyes and water seeds you didn't even know you planted in the darkness. And suddenly, what grew in sorrow will rise into bloom before those who thought you were finished. I'm not asking you to erase the ache, I'm redeeming it. I'm not telling you to forget what hurt, I'm using it as evidence that you survived what should have destroyed you. Those tears were not signs of defeat, they were sacred declarations of trust. Because even when you didn't understand, you still poured your soul out where I could reach it. And now, child, I am responding not with pity, but with power. Not with sympathy, but with signs. The tears of yesterday have completed their assignment. What was released in brokenness is now returning in blessing. What was shed in sorrow is about to speak in miracles. And you will see with your own eyes. I was there all along, counting what no one else cared to notice and preparing what no one else could deliver. You measured my presence by what you could perceive, unaware that in the realm beyond your senses, a war was unfolding on your behalf. Just because you didn't see movement didn't mean I was inactive. You assumed the stillness meant absence, but stillness in your world often signals strategy in mine. I was working in silence while you fought to hear me, guarding territories you didn't even know were under attack. While you thought I had looked away, I was intercepting ambushes set to cripple your future. You felt abandoned, but I was intervening at the very gates where the enemy plotted your collapse. There were curses spoken over your name that never reached their destination because I stood in the path and stopped them mid-flight. You'll never know how many traps I dismantled before they could spring. You'll never comprehend the weight of what I blocked from touching you. Because I don't always announce my defense. I simply win. And I kept winning even while you were convinced I had forgotten your pain. I didn't need applause for the victories you never noticed, I needed your trust when evidence was invisible. You looked for comfort in the natural, but I was battling principalities in the unseen. I didn't let them break you. I didn't let their words manifest. I didn't let the spiritual attack advance past my command. You were not abandoned, you were shielded. I surrounded you with divine barricades while you laid in your bed thinking you were overlooked. And now, the proof of those hidden victories is about to invade your visible world. What was once spiritual protection will become tangible breakthrough. What I fought for in the dark will become the testimony you shout in the light. I didn't need you to fight every battle, I only needed you to stand. Your stillness wasn't failure. It was faith. And that with the posture I required to execute justice without delay. You were exhausted not because you were weak, but because something was happening in the spirit that pulled on your capacity without your awareness. The heaviness you couldn't name was warfare being diffused. The confusion that clouded your thoughts was interference that I was silencing. I was active the entire time. And now the moment has come when I lift the curtain and show you what I've conquered for you. The people who counted you out will soon be witnesses to the strength you didn't even realize I had built within you during the quiet. This is why I told you not to quit. This is why I whispered in the night, just hold on. Because I was doing more than fixing the problem, I was removing the access of the enemy to your destiny. And now that access is closed. The accusation has been dismissed. The curse has been reversed. The warfare has ended. And what I was fighting for is arriving. But not only will you receive the reward, you will walk in the knowledge that I never left. I was there in the silence. I was defending you while you doubted. I was protecting what you couldn't even articulate. Because you are mine. And I don't forget those who belong to me, I fortify them. When the sky turned dark and the winds began to scream against your progress, you assumed you had missed your moment. You thought the chaos meant the promise had been withdrawn. But what you didn't realize was that the very storm designed to unnerve you became the trumpet in the spiritual realm that initiated angelic release. The violence of the season wasn't evidence of abandonment, it was confirmation of divine activation. The pressure, the betrayal, the emotional whiplash, the sudden changes, they weren't coincidences. They were markers, alarms, beacons that reached my throne and declared, "They have not quit." I waited for that moment not because I doubted you, but because heaven responds to resilience. You endured waves that would have drowned others, and that endurance sent a frequency into eternity that only obedience can produce. You didn't curse me in the whirlwind. You did walk away, even when confusion wrapped itself around your mind like a net. You held on to fragments of hope, and those fragments shouted louder than fear. And that's when I gave the command. The angel assigned to your breakthrough had been watching, standing at the edge, waiting for the moment of release, and your survival of that season became the divine permission for movement. Storms don't just shake the earth, they send reports to heaven. And your storm testified of your faith. While others saw you staggering, I saw you anchored. While the winds howled, I heard your silent surrender. And that is what qualified you for what's coming. Not perfection, not control, but the simple refusal to let go, and everything said, "Let it end." The turmoil you despised was the exact environment that confirmed you were ready. I didn't let the storm destroy you. I allowed it to wake up something that would never have emerged in comfort. You learned to hear me without noise. You learned to trust me without signs. You discovered strength while the storm was trying to expose weakness. And now, child, the messenger has begun the descent. Not because the weather is calm, but because you proved you could praise me with no shelter. You learned to believe when the lightning flashed instead of fearing it. You found me in the center of the tempest, and that discovery triggered the shift. The storm's end was not the sign, the survival was. And now that the assignment has been confirmed, the angel is no longer standing still. It carries scrolls of completion. It carries blueprints of new beginnings. And nothing will interfere with its delivery. What came to shake you only shook loose what was false. What roared to intimidate you exposed what couldn't remain. And what you walked through became holy ground for the miraculous. You won't have to explain how you made it, you'll simply stand, and your presence will declare it loud enough. The same voice that shouted in the storm is the same voice now sending provision. I was with you in the breaking, and I am with you now in the birthing. The winds have passed. The shaking has ceased. And the angel who waited patiently during your suffering is now on assignment because you didn't collapse when the thunder came. You rose. And that rising rewrote the story. Prepare now, for what was once the worst season of your life is about to be known as the birthplace of your deliverance. You assumed that my quiet meant distance, that my lack of response was a refusal to intervene. But child, my silence was not disinterest, it was strategy. While you stared at the ceiling wondering if I still heard you, I was speaking to the very outcome you had been waiting for. I wasn't ignoring you. I was giving direct instructions to the miracle meant to find you. You looked for signs, but I was releasing sentences in realms you couldn't hear, commanding circumstances to shift at the precise moment your faith reached its stretch point. I never stopped speaking, I simply changed the audience. There are moments where I step away from responding to your desperation and lean into aggressing your destiny. And during those moments, what seems like divine quietness is actually divine construction. You were listening for an answer, but I was creating one. I didn't shout back at you, not because I was absent, but because I was fully engaged in aligning what you could not control. You didn't see me moving because I was moving what had been hidden. You didn't feel me close, because I was closer to what was coming than to the cries you repeated. I had already heard you the first time, and I had turned to focus all of heaven's attention toward fulfilling what was necessary for manifestation. You were searching for comfort, but I was securing confirmation. I whispered into the future you couldn't see and told it to make room for the child who didn't give up in the dark. I wasn't watching you from a distance. I was orchestrating divine moments that would collide with your timeline like lightning on dry ground. Every delay you misinterpreted as denial was actually me speaking to what I designed for you, preparing it to recognize your voice the moment you stepped into readiness. I didn't forget your words. I buried them into the soil of promise and watered them with time. You thought nothing was happening, but the very atmosphere around you had already begun to bend. I was instructing what once resisted you to now submit. I was speaking to the gates that had been locked for generations and commanding them to open, not because of your striving, but because of your faith under pressure. I was talking to the opportunity that would have crushed you if it came too soon, telling it to wait until your character could carry it. I was whispering into rooms your name had never entered before, preparing hearts to favor you without knowing why. And now, that same miracle I whispered to is responding. Not because you begged louder, but because the whisper I sent into its ears was sealed with eternal authority. It knows where to go. It knows who to touch. It knows what to release. And it knows it carries your name. So don't mistake my past silence for neglect. It was the sound of strategy. It was the quiet before the quake. And now, what I spoke in secret is rising to the surface. Not in pieces, but in fullness. Not in fragments, but in fire. You will soon walk into spaces that feel unfamiliar, but they were built for my voice while you were questioning my presence. And in that moment, you will realize I never stopped working. I just stopped explaining. Because not every holy plan comes with human understanding. Some things are too sacred to be shouted. They must be whispered, directly into the bones of a miracle that was always headed in your direction. You assumed that suffering was the evidence I had withdrawn, but what felt like divine distance was actually me shifting the ground beneath you, making room for what couldn't be built in comfort. The weight you carried wasn't to break you, it was to move you. I didn't allow pressure to harm you. I allowed it to dislodge you from places too small for your calling. You were anchored to routines, relationships, and realities that no longer matched your future, and the ache forced a separation you never would have chosen voluntarily. You wanted peace, but I needed motion. You longed for predictability, but I needed space to plant what eyes haven't seen. You cried out for stability, while I was preparing a transformation that would only make sense in hindsight. I didn't author the pain, but I permitted it, because I saw what you couldn't. I saw how comfort was caging your capacity. I saw how your heart was settling for rhythms that kept you hidden when I had destined you for visibility. So I pulled. I should. I allowed loss to remove what was never meant to stay. And though you felt like you were unraveling, you were actually being rerouted. And with a compass, disappointment became the path you refused to walk until there were no options left. And there, in the silence of surrender, I began to reposition your story. You never needed the approval you lost. You never needed the doors that slammed shut. You never needed the places that couldn't contain your expansion. You needed me fully. And I needed you unanchored from what diluted your identity. So, yes, I permitted the pressure not as a punishment, but as a portal. A divine passageway that brought you out of limitation and into alignment. You couldn't see it while it was happening, but the pain became the vehicle that moved you into prophetic territory. You wouldn't be where you are if I hadn't interrupted your plans with what felt like devastation. It wasn't the enemy winning. It was me overriding what you settled for. And now, as the dust clears, you'll begin to notice that what was torn away made room for what I've been holding back until you were ready to receive. You asked me to bless you, but blessing requires space. So I removed the excess. I trimmed the attachments. I severed what was secretly suffocating your destiny. And now, as you stand on the edge of something unfamiliar but divinely orchestrated, I need you to see that pain wasn't punishment, it was positioning. You're closer to purpose now than you've ever been. You're aligned with grace in ways you couldn't have been without the season that stripped you. And the miracle that's approaching is not coming to rescue you, it's coming to confirm that the suffering didn't win. The angel on its way carries what was reserved for the version of you that rose from the fire. The you that said yes through heartbreak. The you that kept walking while bleeding. The you that stayed faithful without applause. That version is the one I was waiting for. And now that you've arrived there, what I delayed is being delivered. What I held back is being released. And what I once whispered is now echoing through every realm with one message: prepare, fulfillment is arriving. Because the pain didn't bury you, it birthed the positioning that now pulls the promise into view. The season that stretched you was never about punishment, it was an examination of what remained when every visible sign disappeared. The timeline you didn't ask for, the delays that made your heart ache, the quiet seasons when it felt like nothing was happening, those weren't just hard days. They were sacred checkpoints, measuring your faith not by volume, but by endurance. I wasn't watching how loud your prayers were. I was watching whether you would still whisper my name after weeks of silence, whether you would still look toward heaven after months of unanswered cries, whether you would still wait, not because you saw a door, but because you knew I was still the one holding the key. That's what this was really about. Not how much you knew, but how deeply you trusted. When you felt forgotten, you didn't let your heart become bitter. But with a passing point, when you looked around and saw others advancing, yet you still praised me in your hidden place, that was the mark of one who is ready. You weren't being denied, you were being refined. Because the miracle I was preparing for you couldn't arrive in a heart weighed down by resentment. So I watched. Not from a distance, but from the fire beside you. I saw you lose count of the days and still declare, even now, I trust. That moment wasn't small. A decision shifted the atmosphere. When you kept walking even when you felt abandoned, heaven took notice. The angels I had on standby listened to your voice in the waiting, and when it was no longer laced with demand but saturated in surrender, that's when I said, they are ready. Because belief isn't proven in comfort, it's revealed in the wilderness. You passed when you resisted the temptation to create your own way out. You passed when you didn't compromise your integrity for speed. You passed when you chose patience over panic. And now, the test is no longer in session. The results are in. You didn't need to be perfect, you needed to be persistent. And you were. So now, the release begins. What was held back because your character needed deep roots is now rushing forward like a river breaking through a dam. Your faith made room for it. Your delay built the structure that can now carry the weight of what's coming. Others saw your life standing still, but what they didn't see was the depth being carved inside you. You were not being still, you were being shaped into someone unshakable. The kind of person who doesn't crumble under blessing. The kind of person who won't mismanage divine provision. That's what I was looking for. Not outward performance, but inward transformation. And child, you passed that unseen test with more glory than you know. And because you passed, the angel I've assigned to you no longer waits in stillness. It moves now, with purpose, with precision, with a message sealed in victory. It brings a delivery that is not partial, not temporary, not just enough to soothe the past, but enough to launch you into a dimension of promise you've never walked in before. This is what belief unlocks, not just reward, but revelation. You will now understand why the delay had to happen. You will look back and see that what you thought was unanswered was actually perfect timing, tied to your decision to stand in faith. You didn't just survive the waiting, you shifted it. And now, it has no hold on you. Only what's meant for you can enter from this point all. And it's coming fast. Because your belief was not in vain, it was the doorway I was waiting for all along. What's coming isn't a temporary fix, a short burst of relief, or a shallow answer to a deep cry. It's a complete turning of the tide. The one I've sent is not arriving merely to unlock a door. This angel has been instructed to rewire the atmosphere around you. The shift won't only affect what you hold in your hands, it will alter the fabric of who you are. A miracle you've been waiting for isn't meant to simply lift a burden. It's meant to reconstruct what the weight of life tried to deform. This isn't a bandage, it's a rebuilding. And that's why I waited to release it until now. Because only the version of you that emerged from the fire could carry the depth of what I'm delivering. What you're about to encounter isn't just evidence that I heard you, it's proof that I've been reshaping everything connected to you. The blessing you're about to receive won't only answer the request you made in tears. It will transform your very identity. This isn't about helping you return to who you were before the struggle began. It's about launching you into someone you've never seen before. My angel isn't coming with something ordinary. It has been commissioned to carry divine blueprints. It arrives with instructions that will awaken dormant areas of your spirit and pull purpose from places that once felt numb. You thought the breakthrough would just solve a few problems. But I'm not solving your being shifted. This is the kind of transformation that doesn't ask for permission from the past. It doesn't negotiate with your history. It enters like fire and leaves nothing unchanged. Your mindset, your environment, your connections, even your inner vocabulary, everything is about to rise to a new dimension. The breakthrough is not the end. It's the threshold. The miracle is the beginning of divine reconstruction. You won't just receive something, you will become someone new in the process. Because I'm not interested in transactions. I'm interested in total renewal. That's why this moment required such preparation. That's why I removed certain people, interrupted patterns, silenced distractions, and let you sit in what felt like endless waiting. I wasn't just preparing the miracle, I was preparing you for the transformation the miracle would require. I wasn't just responding to a cry for help. I was planning the delivery of a new version of your destiny. That's why this will feel unfamiliar, because nothing I'm about to do will resemble what you've seen before. The places I will take you after this moment will require fresh vision, not recycled assumptions. So when the angel touches down and you begin to feel the atmosphere crack with holy tension, don't look back and try to reclaim what you lost. That season is over. You are stepping into a space where the past can no longer interpret the present. You are being pulled out of limitation, not gently, but decisively. And it will feel like shedding skin that never truly fit. You'll feel the discomfort of elevation. You'll sense the ache of old labels peeling away. But don't resist it. Because this is transformation, not transition. It won't just move you from one level to another, it will convert the very structure of how you see, walk, speak, believe, and lead. And when it settles, you won't just be someone who received a miracle, you will become a sign. A walking confirmation that heaven doesn't only repair, it resurrects. That's what my angel brings. And it's closer than you think. You came to me hoping for relief, for something that would ease the weight, for any sign that the tide would turn, but I had something deeper in motion. What you asked for was survival, but what I planned was resurrection. You were hoping for a shift in a few areas, but I was reaching into places long buried, long dismissed, long forgotten even by you. I heard the surface-level prayers, the immediate needs, the obvious cries, but I also leaned into the groans you couldn't articulate, the ache beneath the request, the soul fractures that never found language. That's where I moved. I didn't come to merely adjust a few broken pieces, I came to breathe life into what you gave up on. I'm not only targeting what's visible, I'm restoring what was secretly stolen over years of disappointment. The joy that faded quietly, the dreams you shelved out of fear, the innocence that was robbed when life betrayed your trust, I'm bringing those back to you. Not as memories, but as resurrected realities. You asked me to help you cope with the damage, but I've come to reverse it. You prayed for something new, but I reached back into the ashes and called forth the beauty that was hidden under layers of regret. My restoration doesn't stop at improvement, it rewrites. And that's what's about to unfold in your life. Not a small shift, not a minor upgrade, but a divine recovery of what should have been yours all along. The time you thought was wasted, I'm redeeming it. The relationships you thought were forever broken, I'm mending them in ways human hands couldn't. The purpose you believed had expired, I'm awakening it with fresh authority. This is not cosmetic. This is structural. I'm rebuilding foundations, not repainting broken walls. I'm restoring your voice, not just your visibility. I'm reviving your identity, not just your circumstances. And it will happen in ways you weren't prepared for. That's why I've kept some things hidden until now. Because if I had revealed the fullness of what I intended to restore, you would have questioned whether it was even possible. But now, after everything you've endured, You're finally in position to receive it, not as someone reaching in desperation, but as one who stands in surrender. That posture is what unlocked this moment. You didn't earn it with perfection, you qualified by refusing to give up when hope was running low. You kept walking. You kept believing when nothing made sense. And now I'm not just changing your atmosphere, I'm restoring the person you were always meant to become before the battles began. You will not look the same. You will not respond the same. You will not settle like you once did. Because my restoration alters the internal architecture. It does more than fix what's broken, it releases the fullness of what's been hidden. And that's what's arriving. Unexpected. Unexplained. Unstoppable. Not because you demanded it, but because I ordained it. The angel moving toward you carries pieces of your life you thought were lost to time. Watch as they return, not in fragments but in fullness. Watch as joy rushes in without warning. As peace begins to rebuild the corners of your soul that felt permanently damaged. As identity takes root where insecurity once lived. You didn't ask for this level of renewal, but I always give more than what's requested when trust is given without conditions. You asked for change, but what's coming will feel like a resurrection. There was a night so heavy, so suffocating, that you questioned whether you had the strength to continue carrying anything at all. The ache became louder than the promises you remembered. The silence felt louder than any prayer you had ever spoken. You weren't seeking applause, you just wanted something to shift, anything to show that what you were enduring had purpose. And in that one fragile moment, when quitting almost felt like the safest option, you stood on the brink of destiny, unaware that heaven had just leaned forward. What you didn't see was that while you lay there feeling completely overlooked, a divine decision had just been sealed. A gate had just been opened. A messenger had just been dispatched. You weren't losing, it was labor. And that final wave of torment was not a signal of failure, it was a final contraction before the miracle began to break through. You didn't realize it then, but the pressure you felt wasn't punishment, it was prophetic tension. Something eternal had shifted, and your soul felt it before your mind could comprehend it. Your spirit knew something was near, but your body only felt the crushing weight of a battle that refused to end. That's why it felt unbearable. Not because you were weak, but because breakthrough was already happening in dimensions you couldn't access with your eyes. I never left you there, though it felt like isolation. I sat beside you in that moment when you said, "I can't keep going," and I whispered strength into places inside of you that had been silent for too long. I breathed new courage into you while you lay curled in the dark. The decision to endure that one more night was all I needed to see. That moment of barely hanging on became a banner in heaven declaring, "They still believe." And that was the moment the angel on assignment began to descend faster. It was never going to pass you by. But there are appointed times. And that night when you almost let go was the threshold of fulfillment. You were seconds away from stepping into a moment that had been waiting on your persistence. I saw the fatigue in your eyes. I counted every moment you stayed awake begging me to speak. You didn't know it, but I was responding, just not in the way you expected. I wasn't sending comfort first. I was establishing alignment. That night of almost quitting became the night of divine release. Not because you had strength, but because you allowed yourself to feel the weight without running. That kind of surrender activates authority. That kind of honesty moves realms. And now, as the hours pass and the atmosphere continues to shift, you'll begin to notice it slow at first, then suddenly. That heaviness is lifting, and dread is weakening. Because that night you nearly gave up with the final push. It was the ending of delay and the beginning of delivery. You didn't know it, but the enemy tried to make that your expiration. But I made it your evidence. You stayed. You breathed through it. You whispered my name even when it hurt to say it. And now, the angel who heard that sound, the whisper of endurance, is standing with instructions to carry what you thought you'd never live to see. This is the beauty of what I do. I wait until it seems impossible, then I arrive undeniably. Not just to comfort, but a crown. The night that almost broke you became the stage I'll now use to reveal that I've been moving all along. The moment your hands fell limp at your sides, when you couldn't muster another shout, when your spirit sighed with exhaustion, and your voice fell silent, that was not defeat, but with a trigger. That's when the shift began to accelerate. You assumed you had failed because you reached your limit, but in my kingdom, surrender is not collapse, it's access. What you saw as a breaking point was actually a doorway, and it only opened when your striving finally ceased. You were so focused on holding everything together that you didn't realize I was waiting for you to fall into me completely. Not partially. Not conditionally. Completely. You weren't meant to carry the burden and to break through, you were meant to yield. And when you did, even unintentionally, heaven responded with urgency. The miracle that had been circling, the breakthrough that had been lingering just outside your vision, it recognized that moment. It recognized the sound of a surrendered heart. And the angel I appointed began to move with divine momentum, not because you pushed harder, but because you stopped trying to force what only I could release. You cried in frustration, believing you had nothing left to offer. But that emptiness was never failure, it was foundation. I don't pour oil into vessels already full of human effort. I fill the ones emptied in the secret place. The strength you lost became the altar where I built what's now being sent to you. You didn't know it, but while you sat there with nothing left to give, I was awakening what had been waiting on your surrender. The speed at which the miracle is now approaching isn't a reflection of time, it's a reflection of timing. Because when your power ended, mine began to manifest in its fullest. You were never designed to finish the journey in your own ability. That's why I allowed your strength to fade so you would finally lean on mine. And now, the help that once waited is racing forward, not toward who you tried to be, but toward the one who chose to trust me with nothing left. You give me your fatigue, and I give you favor. You handed me your burnout, and I sent you blessing. You released your timeline, and I set in motion something no clock can measure. My angel didn't move when you shouted in desperation. It moved when your soul exhaled in trust. And now, the movement will become visible. The impossible is gaining ground. The unexplainable is closing in. Not because you conquered the season, but because you let me carry you through it. You'll look back soon and realize it wasn't in your pushing that the answer was unlocked. It was in your yielding. And everything is about to look different. The atmosphere will thicken with evidence. The pace of heaven will match your obedience. And you will finally understand that my power was never waiting on your performance, it was waiting on your posture. The posture of one who said, God, I don't have the strength, but I still have you. That's what I needed to hear. That's what unlocked the movement. And now that you've reached the end of your own resources, watch how quickly mine overtake you. Because the miracle isn't just near, it's running, and it knows exactly where to land. What once felt like it would never arrive, what you waited for with trembling hope and silenced expectations, is now being pulled into your present faster than you imagined. The delay that stretched you was never about withholding, it was about alignment. But now that the pieces have shifted, and the internal posture has matched the weight of the promise, I have spoken acceleration over what was paused. What once crawled toward you with hesitation now races with divine momentum. The same promise that felt locked behind time is suddenly tearing through invisible barriers. It's not because you begged harder or waited longer, it's because now the timing is perfect. What was stuck is being released, not in fragments but in fullness. What you thought you missed is being drawn into view with multiplied intensity. And the speed at which it now moves is not natural, it's prophetic. I do not forget seasons of stillness. I honor them. I mark the patience with power. I reward the endurance with divine speed. What others receive through years of strategy, I'm delivering to you through moments of surrender. I'm not following earthly calendars. I'm releasing according to kingdom clocks. You thought you were behind, but I'm about to catapult you into spaces you assumed were out of reach. That's how I restore. I don't just bring back what was held up, I push it forward with a force that only heaven can produce. This is not compensation, it's consecrated acceleration. What was crawling is now leaping. What was delayed is now overtaking. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to fight for it. You just have to stay aligned with me as I pour out what had been waiting on my signal. I'm not just making out for lost time, I'm redefining it. I'm folding seasons into a single moment. I'm collapsing what would have taken years into days. Because when I declare now, nothing can resist. The process still mattered. The delay still served its purpose. But the time for delay is over. This is the hour where what seemed out of reach enters your grasp without strain. This is when favor finds you standing still, and doors swing open before you knock. It will confuse those who counted you out. It will silence the voices that assume your delay meant denial. Because what I'm about to do cannot be explained by logic, it will only be understood through revelation. I am not just redeeming the time, I'm reordering it. And you will walk into environments where others planted, but I will cause you to harvest. You will enter moments where opportunities were thought to be gone, but I will resurrect them with urgency. The miracle is no longer waiting for permission, it has heard my command. It is running. It is overtaking. It is aligning itself with your current reality, not the one you thought was too damaged to bless. You asked me why it took so long, but soon you'll be asking how it happened so fast. And in that moment, you'll realize, I was never late. I was waiting for this exact second, this divine intersection, this holy combination of trust, obedience, and timing. Now that it's here, the same thing that once seemed so far will arrive with a suddenness that breaks every limitation you previously accepted. The breakthrough will not just come, it will multiply. The blessing will not trickle, it will flood. The promise will not hesitate, it will overtake. Because I have declared acceleration, and nothing can stand in the path of what I have released. You came to me with specific prayers, thinking you had pinpointed the solutions, believing you knew what would make things right again. But child, while your words were precious, what I was preparing in secret was far beyond what your understanding could hold. I heard every request. I felt every longing. But I saw the gaps you couldn't perceive. I knew the areas you overlooked, the wounds you buried too deep, the dreams you dismissed, the future you downsized to protect yourself from disappointment. And so I assigned an angel, not just to deliver what you spoke, but to release what your heart didn't know how to express. What's coming is not just an answer, it's a revelation. A holy unveiling of my goodness that was never limited to your vocabulary. The angel isn't arriving with a list, it's carrying a flood. Because I'm not a responder, I'm a restorer. I don't only respond to need, I restore what was stolen, rebuild what was broken, and resurrect what you silently gave up on. You didn't realize it, but when you said, "Help me," I searched the deepest places within you and began forming a blessing so intricate, so perfectly matched to your story, that it would make even your past make sense. The miracle on its way isn't coming to pass thing, it's coming to complete thing. It's bringing healing you didn't know you needed. It's bringing closure to seasons you thought would always haunt you. It's bringing joy where numbness became your normal. And this time, the blessing will touch every layer, not just the obvious ones. I've seen the silent needs. I've marked the unspoken grief. And my answer is thorough. You've waited not because I was reluctant, but because I was filling every compartment of this miracle with what only heaven could measure. You prayed for provision, and I packed purpose inside it. You asked for strength, and I infused identity within it. You hoped for peace, but I added wisdom, clarity, and protection too. I'm not sending a piece, I'm sending a portion so complete it will fill voids you forgot existed. And when it arrives, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Because it won't just feel like an answer, it will feel like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know had gone missing. That's how intentional I am. That's how detailed my love is. I didn't rush this. I took time, because what's on the way is tailored to you, not borrowed from someone else's story. And it will fit. Graphically, powerfully, peacefully. You'll notice it not just by the change in your circumstances, but by the shift in your very breath. You'll rest differently, speak differently, stand differently, because you'll be carrying something that affirms who you are, not just what you went through. The angel I've dispatched doesn't just carry answers, it carries divine design. It's releasing something that was crafted for such a time as this. You didn't even know how to ask for it, but I prepared it anyway. That's what it means to be loved by me. I give according to your destiny, not just your desperation. I bless according to your future, not your fears. And now, child, brace yourself. What's arriving will make you weep, not because of sorrow, but because of how specifically I remembered you, how intimately I understood you, how deeply I honored every silent request. This angel is not just bringing breakthrough, it's bringing completeness. And once it touches your life, you will never again settle for blessings that only scratch the surface. The places you thought would welcome you turned you away, and it felt like the closing of destiny itself. Every slammed door echoed through your soul louder than thunder. You assumed rejection meant redirection in theory, but in reality, you still questioned whether you missed something, whether you fell short, whether you failed me. But I need you to see what was really happening. I never sent you to those places to stay. I allowed you to knock so the echo would guide you elsewhere. You saw barriers. I saw blueprints. I wasn't closing opportunities, I was protecting you from limited access. Some doors weren't locked because you weren't worthy. They were sealed because what was behind them could never carry what I've deposited inside you. Those rooms were too small. Their ceilings would have suffocated your growth. You begged for entrance, not realizing you were pleading to be confined. But I love you too much to allow it. So I closed what you idolized, I interrupted what you thought was certain, and I watched you weep not because I was distant but because I knew what was ahead. While you stood in confusion before doorways that refused you, I was building entry points you didn't yet have the vision to see. These weren't ordinary passages, they were hidden access points tailored for those who refused to fold when man said no. And now, the moment has arrived where you'll begin to notice the strange shifts, the sudden openings in unexpected spaces, the invitations you didn't apply for, the alignments that feel too precise to be coincidence. Those are the windows I rerouted your path toward. They were always part of the plan. They just required patience. I had to wait until your heart was no longer bitter about what didn't open. Because bitter hearts miss divine windows. They stare at the locked doors, paralyzed by disappointment, and walk past the blessing disguised in unfamiliar frames. But you chose to keep walking. You chose to keep worshiping. You refused to let rejection harden you. And that's why you're now stepping into a moment where the overlooked places are becoming sacred spaces. The windows I've prepared are not obvious. They require discernment. They don't carry flashy signs. But once you step through, you'll realize they lead to expanses greater than anything you asked for. I never needed man's approval to elevate you. I never relied on their selection to establish your purpose. I bypass systems. I reroute influence. I write narratives. And I do it through windows no one sees coming. You're about to walk into places that people said were unreachable, not through traditional doors, but through sudden access only I can provide. These are not shortcuts. They are strategic openings into regions your name was already written into long ago. You won't have to force them open. They are unlocking because your faith turned the handle. They are responding to the quiet belief that whispered God still can, even while tears streamed down your face. And now, you'll see the beauty of divine rerouting. You'll understand why I allowed the shutouts, why I didn't let you settle, why I didn't explain what I was doing. Because if I had shown you then, you would have tried to rush toward what required precise timing. And these windows don't stay open forever. They swing wide when alignment is exact. And child, that alignment is now. The coordinates have synced. The angel I dispatched carries the keys not to the doors you thought you needed, but to the access points I've ordained for your next chapter. You'll no longer feel the ache of rejection, you'll feel the wind of sudden elevation. And when others ask how you got in, how you arrived, how things changed so quickly, you'll look back with clarity and say, the doors didn't open because they weren't meant to. I followed the whisper, and heaven opened a window. You didn't realize it at the time, but the places you clung to were keeping you small. The familiar had become a safe prison, predictable, manageable, and quietly limiting. You prayed for elevation, but tried to keep one foot in what felt secure. You whispered for miracles, yet still held tight to routines that dulled your hunger. And because I love you too much to leave you confined in comfort, I began closing the doors you wouldn't walk away from. I interrupted the rhythm you thought was stability. I allowed the silence to grow where once there had been noise. I let the support dry up where you used to feel seen. And though you thought it was abandonment, it was alignment. I was making room. I was clearing space. I was pushing out the ordinary to make room for what doesn't fit into predictable patterns. I never called you to a normal life. I didn't design you to merely survive seasons. I marked you for something that wouldn't blend in, something that would challenge the limits others have accepted. But as long as you held on to the familiar, there was no room for the supernatural to stretch its wings in your story. So I disrupted what you didn't have the strength to release. I shook what you built your identity around so that you would look up, not outward. And when the things you depended on began to fade, it wasn't to leave you empty, it was to pull your focus higher. Because what's coming doesn't look like what you've known. And I couldn't allow it to arrive while your expectations were still tied to what's been. The extraordinary doesn't visit crowded hearts. It arrives in spaces that have been emptied of counterfeit comfort. That's why I had to remove it. That's why I let what felt solid begin to dissolve. Not to harm you, but to prepare the landing ground for glory. You asked me why it suddenly felt like everything was shifting. Why what once worked began to break down. Why connections grew quiet. Why paths that once opened began to close without warning. And I tell you now, it was me. It was my hand. I wasn't punishing you. I was positioning you. You were standing in a field too narrow to hold the harvest I've already ordered for you. I couldn't let you stay in a place where the soil could only produce small. So I called you out. And now, you're standing in unfamiliar territory, but this is where faith finds its wings. You've been stripped of the old dependencies, so I can now clothe you in divine fullness. And soon, what felt like a breaking will be seen as a birthing. You'll realize I didn't remove what you loved to leave you with less. I removed what wasn't enough so I could release what had been waiting to find you all along. The extraordinary is not random, it arrives to those who dare to release what they once called home. It settles in places where faith made room before sight confirmed it. And because you kept walking through the discomfort, because you didn't run back when things got uncertain, you've made yourself ready for something the ordinary could never contain. The angel assigned to your miracle does not carry familiar things. It does not deliver pieces that keep you safe, it brings encounters that change everything. And that is what's approaching. You will soon look around and realize why the season of comfort ended. Because what I'm placing in your hands now could never have been formed in a space that required you to stay small. I shut the easy way, so you would take the elevated one. And now, that higher path is calling. And everything I removed is about to make sense in the light of what I'm about to release. You were walking through days that made you question if your existence had any significance, quietly wondering if anything you did truly mattered, if anyone really saw the effort it took just to keep going. There were moments you smiled outwardly, while inwardly feeling like a shadow passing through rooms unnoticed. You didn't speak of it often, but the question lingered like a heavy curtain over your thoughts. Do I really matter? What you didn't realize was that while earth offered silence, heaven was speaking your name aloud in rooms of divine authority. In the presence of angels, in the council of the eternal. Your name was not forgotten, it was being announced. While you stood on soil feeling unseen, your identity was being declared in the throne room of glory. I didn't wait for you to feel worthy to bring you into remembrance. I spoke of you while you wrestled with your reflection. I called you chosen while you were calling yourself inadequate. I released declarations about your destiny while you tried to minimize your presence just to make it through another day. Because I don't need you to feel worthy for my purposes to unfold, I need you to know you're known. Fully, deeply, eternally. And in that sacred place where no lie can enter, I called for movement on your behalf. The angel I've sent wasn't summoned by your perfection. It was released by my proclamation. When I said your name, all of heaven aligned. Your worth is not measured by the voices around you, it's defined by the one who authored your beginning. You were never overlooked. You were being preserved. Hidden for a moment, not forgotten. Held in a silence that was sacred, not empty. And now, the announcements, made in glory, are beginning to echo in your atmosphere. You'll begin to sense it in unexpected moments, a lifting of the heaviness, a shift in the tension, a sudden awareness that something is drawing near. That's not coincidence. That's the ripple of my declaration reaching your reality. The words I spoke about you didn't stay in heaven, they created motion. Favor is responding. Provision is being drawn in. Doors are being nudged open. And it all began when I said your name. Not as a label, but as a summoning. Not as a reminder, but as a release. I said it with intention, with the fullness of what I designed for you before your first breath. And every time you doubted your value, every time you wondered if you were too broken, too late, too overlooked, I was declaring, they are mine. And that alone silences every accusation. My voice overrides every earthly verdict. And what's coming now is not a reward for confidence, it's a result of being seen in the unseen places. I will show you what happens when heaven calls your name. I will make it clear that your worth was never tied to applause, to recognition, to titles or positions. It was anchored in identity. And now, that identity is unlocking things no effort ever could. The angel on its way is carrying not only what you've waited for, but evidence that you've been celebrated in places far beyond what your eyes could ever see. And soon, you'll walk into rooms you didn't chase, receive invitations you didn't expect, and carry influence you didn't ask for. Not because you finally proved yourself, but because I always knew who you were, even when you did. So hold your head higher, not with arrogance, but with holy assurance. Your name has already been spoken in heaven. Now it's time for earth to respond. What's about to arrive in your life will not resemble anything you've seen before, because it wasn't crafted by human hands. This isn't the kind of assistance that can be explained through chance or coincidence. This is assistance touched by heaven, authored in the quiet chambers of eternity, and sealed with power beyond comprehension. While you were trying to figure out how it would happen, I was designing how it would be undeniable. You didn't see the preparation, because I wanted it to be pure. Hidden from contamination, concealed from doubt, wrapped in mystery until the moment of release. That's what makes it holy. It was formed away from the reach of your fear. This help isn't generic. It isn't recycled. It's not repurposed from someone else's blessing. It was created with your name on it, sculpted to fit the cracks that pain left behind, measured to address wounds you never told anyone about. It carries elements of healing you didn't know you needed, timing you didn't expect, and provision that doesn't just meet your need, it overflows. This is not random. This is precise. This is what I call intentional grace. I didn't assign just any answer to your situation. I commanded a release that carries my signature. And that's why you'll know it's me. Because it will come with a peace that doesn't make sense. It will carry clarity where confusion used to sit. It will close the mouths of those who doubted and open new paths that no man could have manufactured. This help is not small. It's weighty with purpose. And when it touches down, it won't just solve the surface, it will stir the depths. Because that's how I respond to those who wait in faith. I don't just give them what they expected. I exceed it in a way that rewrites their understanding of what's possible. You're not receiving assistance, you're being touched by alignment. The angel assigned to your breakthrough isn't coming with partial answers. It's carrying the fullness of what I promised. Every delay was part of the layering, the perfecting, the ensuring that when this moment came, nothing would be missing. What I've dispatched has been soaked in intercession, wrapped in my word, and infused with power that cannot be reversed. It will land with such precision that even your past will have to bow. The situations that once mocked you will become altars of glory. The places where you were denied will now make room for your name. Not because you forced your way in, but because my favor cleared the air. I've placed my mark on what's coming. You'll see it in the timing. You'll feel it in the atmosphere. You'll sense it before it arrives. And when it does, don't shrink. Don't apologize. Don't second guess. It's not too good to be true. It's exactly what I meant for you all along. The fingerprints on this help will not belong to people. They will belong to me. And because of that, no one will be able to take credit for what unfolds next. You will know that I saw you, chose you, and moved for you without a spotlight, without a stage, without needing the world's permission. I moved because you belonged to me. I acted because you believed when it hurt. I responded because your spirit whispered, even if nothing changes, I'll trust you still. And now everything is changing. Not slowly, not partially, but fully and suddenly. And when the miracle arrives, you won't just receive help, you'll encounter me in the most personal, unmistakable, and unforgettable way. You've measured your breakthrough by human clocks, watching days turn into weeks and months into years, wondering if the promise somehow lost its way. You watched others receive while you waited in silence. You questioned the stillness, not knowing I was orchestrating something that required more than just time. It required divine synchronization. What's coming to you wasn't delayed. It was preserved, shielded from early arrival so it wouldn't arrive half-built, protected from premature exposure so it wouldn't be stolen by unprepared hands. I wasn't ignoring your cries. I was completing the backdrop. I was aligning hearts, conversations, locations, and atmospheres, all so that when the moment finally came, there would be no mistaking that I alone did it. This miracle could not arrive rushed. It carries too much weight. It holds too much transformation. And it had to arrive not just when you were desperate, but when your spirit had the capacity to carry it without breaking under its brilliance. You assumed nothing was happening, but I was moving beneath the surface, crafting an answer that would arrive with such perfect timing that every former disappointment would melt into purpose. This wasn't about speed, it was about significance. You didn't need a miracle that just filled a gap. You needed one that rewrote the season. That's why I didn't send it when you first asked. I was watching how your character grew while the clock kept ticking. I was watching how your obedience deepened without applause. You wanted instant results, but I was building eternal impact. And now that the fullness of time has arrived, so has the green light. What you're about to step into will prove why I took my time. He will speak loudly, without words, that I have not forgotten a single detail. The arrival of this miracle is not just about your relief. It's about my glory being revealed through your story. And I will not share that glory with another. That's why I didn't allow anyone else to rescue you. That's why the doors you tried to open by force refused to budge. That's why the places you begged to enter stayed locked. Because I didn't want you to walk through them before the testimony was ready to be told. You won't need to convince anyone of what I'm about to do. The timing will be the proof. The precision of its arrival will silence every doubt. The way it unfolds will speak louder than anything you could say. And you'll know, down to your bones, that I was never late. I was calculating every layer, weaving each thread, stretching your faith not to break you, but to shape you. And now, because you didn't quit in the waiting, because you didn't abandon the process even when it hurt, I'm about to show you what my timing really looks like. It doesn't crawl. It invades. It arrives suddenly, completely, and undeniably. And when it does, the very places that dismissed you will witness your elevation. The very voices that mocked your expectation will be silenced by manifestation. You don't need to defend what's coming. You just need to recognize it when it arrives. Let go of your frustration with the calendar. I've been writing a chapter that cannot be rushed. And now, it's ready to unfold. Prepare yourself. The moment you were convinced had passed you by is standing at your door, not late, not early, but exactly when it will shout my glory the loudest. What's being released into your life right now is more than blessing, it's defense. It's not coming to decorate your days with temporary relief, it's coming to fortify your destiny. The angel I've sent isn't just carrying gifts of breakthrough. It's wearing armor forged from my authority. Every step it takes toward you is dismantling unseen threats. It moves quietly, but its presence shakes the ground beneath every demonic agenda formed against you. You didn't realize it, but while you were praying for provision, I was assigning protection. Because what's arriving carries weight, and anything carrying glory attracts warfare. That's why I couldn't just send favor, I had to send covering. The angel now approaching you doesn't only open doors, it guards them. It won't just lead you into promise, it will stand at the threshold to ensure nothing unclean crosses behind you. You won't have to fight the same battles once it arrives. Its assignment is to seal what I've started, to surround what I'm birthing, to ensure the miracle you receive doesn't get stolen in its infancy. You cried for help, but I'm sending an army disguised as a messenger. Its wings carry my word. Its movements carry my fire. It knows your name because I whispered it before it departed from my presence. And every step it takes releases order where chaos tried to reign. You've noticed tension lately, sudden resistance that seems unexplainable. That's because the enemy felt the movement before you did. He senses the angel approach you. He knows he can't stop what's coming, so he's been trying to drain you before it arrives. But his efforts are already failing. Every scheme designed to distract or weaken you is being intercepted before it reaches your spirit. The angel's protection is not reactive, it's preemptive. It's standing between you and every hidden plan of destruction. It's intercepting words spoken against your peace. It's redirecting attacks meant to shake your faith. It's blocking access points where fear once entered freely. This is divine security moving in silence. What you once fought alone, you'll no longer have to face unguarded. My protection now goes ahead of you, encircles you, and follows behind you. You're stepping into an era of preservation, not panic. The favor you receive will not come with fragility, it will come with fire. And that's how you will know it's from me. It won't fade under pressure. It won't crumble when questioned. It won't depend on approval to stay standing. Because I don't give blessings that break under scrutiny. I release glory that endures. And this angel is carrying that assurance. You will begin to notice peace in places that used to feel heavy. That's not coincidence, it's coverage. You'll sense stillness where conflict once thrived. That's not luck, it's divine intervention. The walls around you are being rebuilt in silence. The gates of your destiny are being reinforced. Even the spaces that once leaked hope are being sealed. And the one I've sent knows exactly what to do. You won't need to command it, it already carries orders from my throne. Its protection will outlast your worry. Its strength will surpass your understanding. And when the next storm forms, you'll realize you're not standing where you once stood. You'll sense it, an unseen shield, a tangible calm, a confidence that doesn't come from human assurance but from heaven's presence. This is how I work. I never send favor unguarded. I never release glory without defense. And now, as this angel draws near, know this: you're entering a chapter that cannot be reversed, attacked, or undone. Because what I cover God be touch. And you, my child, are covered completely. The very forces that rose against you with the intent to diminish, distract, and dismantle your calling are now being forced to acknowledge the authority I have placed upon your life. What once stood in your way with defiance is about to stand aside in surrender. Every scheme that was crafted in secrecy, every word spoken in envy, every circumstance that was meant to collapse you, they are now being reversed by my hand. This isn't just survival, this is vindication. I am not only delivering you from the trap, I am establishing you above it. What was designed to wound will become the backdrop for wonder. The same enemies that watched you suffer will now witness you soar. And they won't be able to stop it. Because I'm not just changing your story, I'm confronting theirs. The narrative that said you were done, forgotten, irrelevant, too broken, too far gone, those lies are about to be silenced by the weight of my favor upon you. What was sent to harm you had momentum, but what I've sent to bless you has authority. And authority always outranks aggression. You didn't retaliate. You didn't return hate with hate. You kept quiet when you were mocked. You stayed steady when you were overlooked. You prayed instead of plotted. You wept instead of wounded. And because of that posture, I am stepping in now not just to reward but to reverse. Every tongue that rose against you in judgment will be silenced. Every setup that was planned for your failure is now being restructured to serve your elevation. I will make what was meant to be your downfall the very platform from which your promise is launched. And the reason it will be undeniable is because I'm making your blessing confront the very places where your name was mishandled. It will happen in secret. It will happen in front of the same eyes that assumed you would never recover. Because what I'm doing in your life will not only bless you, it will shift atmospheres. It will convict the proud. It will correct the slander. It will confuse the opposition. I'm causing the harvest to rise up in the same fields where sabotage once grew. And the blessing won't ask permission. It will occupy. What once resisted you will have to make room. I am forcing what was sent to curse to now cooperate with what is blessed. And even the delay is bowing. Even the injustice is being bent into alignment. What you thought was a loss was actually bait for my justice. The tears you shed weren't in vain, they watered the very ground where I'm now causing divine favor to bloom. You didn't have to fight for yourself. I was watching. I kept the record. And now I'm executing judgment not with wrath, but with righteousness. Your blessing is going to walk right past the barriers that were built to keep it out. Your miracle will walk through walls that once kept you boxed in. And it will not be timid, it will be triumphant. Because this isn't just about making things right for you. It's about revealing the strength of the one who never stopped fighting on your behalf. I never forgot the pain. I never overlooked the betrayal. I never ignored the injustice. I simply stored it until the day I would turn it into fuel for the promise. The day has arrived. My angel isn't just bringing provision, it's bringing divine reordering. And as it touches down, everything that rose to break you will now be forced to acknowledge that I had my hand on you the entire time. He rejoiced at what looked like your collapse. He celebrated the delay, thinking it was defeat. He mocked your prayers, mistaking silence for surrender. The adversary observed your fatigue, your tears, your questions, and he mistook your weariness as a sign that you had given up. But what he didn't account for was timing. What he couldn't detect was what had already been activated. While darkness laughed, heaven was mobilizing. While your soul ached, my angel was drawing closer, not with hesitation, but with swift instruction from my throne. The enemy underestimated one truth. I do not abandon the ones I call mine. And while he was gloating in temporary shadows, breakthrough was already at the threshold. He didn't hear the command I gave. He didn't see the dispatch. He didn't perceive the movement behind the veil. He thought he had time. He thought his interference had worked. But he miscalculated. What looked like a delay to him was actually divine setup. And when the angel reached the gate, every lie began to tremble. Every curse began to unravel. The celebration of hell was cut short by the sound of approaching glory. He thought you were isolated, but I had you surrounded. He thought you were forgotten, but you were being hidden for impact. He thought the wound would silence your faith, but it only sharpened it. And now, the shift has begun. My angel did not come to negotiate, it came to reclaim. It came to take back what was stolen, to restore what was broken, and to deliver what had been held hostage by delay. The enemy's smile is fading because he sees what's coming. He recognizes the fragrance of fulfillment, and it's the scent of his defeat. You don't have to fear retaliation. This angel isn't sent to warn. It's sent to war. It carries a mandate sealed by my voice. And when I send something, no demonic presence can override it. The gates that once blocked you are now under judgment. The voices that spoke against you are being silenced, not by your hand, but by mine. The battle you thought you were losing is turning into a testimony of divine reversal. I am not letting the enemy write the final word on your story. That right belongs to me alone. And now, The one I've sent is arriving with authority to enforce what has already been declared. You will see it. You will feel the change. What resisted you will start to yield. What opposed you will begin to collapse under the weight of divine presence. And all the while, the enemy will be forced to watch paralyzed, powerless, and exposed. He underestimated what I've been building inside you during the pain. He didn't expect you to rise with clarity. He didn't think you'd still be standing with your heart open, even after everything that came against you. But you were. And because you didn't give up when quitting would have been easy, you're about to witness the kind of redemption that makes every dark moment bow its knee. I do not forget the mockery. I do not ignore the accusations. I take it all into account and I respond with justice. And my justice always leaves a mark. This miracle won't just bless you, it will rebuke what rose against you. It will speak for itself. The enemy won't be able to argue with what's about to unfold. The very moment he thought he had the last laugh will become the moment you receive the very thing he tried to bury. Because I always finish what I start. And I never allow the enemy to rejoice over what I've destined to rise. They saw you stumble. They witnessed the moments when your voice shook, when your confidence faded, when you second-guessed everything you once believed I spoke over you. They laughed in private at your efforts. They whispered in corners when doors didn't open, when your name was missing from rooms you should have been in, when progress didn't come fast enough to match your prayers. What they didn't know was that I was writing a story they would not be able to erase, revise, or rewrite. What looked like shame was actually set up. What they called failure I called foundation. And now, I am raising you not in the shadows, but in plain sight. I am lifting you in places where your name was dismissed, where your value was underestimated, and where your journey was mocked. But this time, there will be no denial, because I'm not just bringing you out, I'm placing you above. Not because you demanded it, but because you trusted me even when things fell apart in front of those who were waiting for you to disappear. I saw how humiliation tried to sink your spirit. I heard the way your soul broke in silence while you held your head up in public. I was there when you asked why your obedience led to such painful exposure. And now, I am turning every ounce of that public discomfort into a platform of divine promotion. They will see not because you need validation, but because I will not let their last memory of you be the moment of your collapse. I am rewriting the memory. They will recall your weeping and watch your rising. They will remember your delay and witness your delivery. I don't just heal behind the scenes, I reveal my glory in front of spectators. I want them to understand I defend my own. I honor the ones who didn't bow to bitterness. I raise the ones who remained faithful when loyalty cost them comfort. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't retaliate. You blessed while bleeding. And for that, I am rewarding you openly. Your next chapter will be marked by visibility, not for your glory, but for mine. They will know that only my hand could have turned the very thing meant to disgrace you into the very thing that becomes your launching pad. This isn't a quiet recovery, it's a public reversal. I am placing you in positions that were previously locked to prove that I don't just restore, I elevate. This kind of elevation doesn't come from Canadian credentials, but calculations, it comes from Tottenham. You've been in covenant with me, and that matters more than the opinions of crowds or the preferences of gatekeepers. I've seen what they did. I valued what they ignored. And now, as my angel delivers this next move in your life, watch how quickly the narrative shifts. Watch how those who once pitied you now pause in awe. Watch how the places that called you unqualified now open with invitation. Not because you change for them, but because I change the story for you. And there will be no confusion about how it happened. You won't have to explain. The evidence will speak. I'm not raising you to prove a point, I'm raising you because this is your time. Your obedience under pressure was the signal. Your stillness in chaos was the permission. Your refusal to perform for approval with the posture I waited for. And now, I will place you high not in arrogance, but in fulfillment. What embarrassed you will now empower you. What they laughed at will now lift you. And the same eyes that watched you break will now witness you built stronger than ever before by grace, by favor, and by my unstoppable decree. You walked through rooms where your presence was overlooked, where your voice was muted beneath louder ones, where your efforts went unnoticed while others were celebrated. You gave without expectation, contributed in silence, and showed up when you weren't seen, believing your value didn't depend on recognition. But in the quiet spaces of your soul, you wondered why you kept getting passed over. You questioned if your journey even mattered to those around you. What you didn't know was that I was recording every step, every unseen act of faithfulness, every moment you stayed when you had every right to leave. I saw how you endured without applause. I watched as you carried burdens without complaint. And now, I'm shifting the atmosphere of those same places that once dismissed you. I'm turning the hearts that were blind to you into witnesses of what I preserved in you. They didn't know the depth of what you survived. They didn't understand the intensity of the battles you fought behind closed doors. But I did. And I've decided that their indifference will not be the final word spoken over your identity. I am turning their silence into recognition, not because you need validation, but because your story carries power that demands acknowledgement. The places where you were treated as insignificant are about to experience the weight of who you've become in the fire. Not the version they once ignored, but the version I shaped when no one was watching. You will stand in those same spaces not as someone begging for a seat, but as one whose survival speaks louder than any title ever could. Your endurance earned what no shortcut ever could. You endured loneliness without letting it make you bitter. You kept loving even when it wasn't returned. You stayed kind in the face of apathy. And now, I'm not just rewarding that obedience, I'm making it known. Not to glorify you, but to demonstrate what I do with those who remain rooted in me even when the world withholds its honor. This is a divine reversal, a holy unveiling. The same circles that excluded you will now expand because they'll realize the very strength they needed was already near them all along. They couldn't see it then, but they will now. They will hear the wisdom in your words. They will feel the weight of your testimony. They will recognize the oil that came through pain they never bothered to ask about. And this time, you won't have to fight for acknowledgement. I will bring it to you. I will highlight what they missed. I will stir hearts to suddenly remember what they overlooked. And when the doors open again, you won't enter the same way you did before. You'll walk in with authority, clothed in grace, steady with the knowledge that you don't need approval to carry purpose. This is not about revenge, it's about revealing what was always inside you. The honor is not coming to heal your ego, it's coming to validate the process you survived in silence. The places that once ignored you will now seek your voice, your presence, your wisdom, not because you changed who you are, but because I've changed how they see. And when it happens, you will not be prideful, you will be positioned. You will know that I have done this. You will walk in humility, aware that I made your pain prophetic, that I turned every rejection into roots, that I used every season of silence to stretch your strength. And now, the sound of your survival will echo louder than the noise of your dismissal. The same spaces that failed to notice your presence will now honor your perseverance. And through it all, you will know, the one who sees in secret always rewards in ways that no man can deny. There were nights when the silence was so vast it felt like even heaven had turned its face away. You counted unanswered prayers and mistook protection for distance. You thought I had withdrawn my presence because everything familiar disappeared, but what you called absence was actually insulation. I placed you in hiddenness, not because I was angry, but because exposure too early would have destroyed what I was forming within you. I didn't leave you. I covered you. When relationships broke apart without reason, when opportunities dissolved right before fruition, when you sat in stillness wondering if you had been forgotten, I was wrapping you in layers of divine preservation. I hid you from eyes that would have drained your purpose before it matured. I kept you invisible to voices that would have misinterpreted your potential. You thought isolation was punishment, it was protection disguised as delay. Every closed circle, every quiet season, every unanswered call was a wall I built around your promise so that when the appointed hour arrived, you'd step forward whole, uncontaminated by counterfeit influence. The waiting wasn't wasted time, it was incubation. The silence wasn't neglect. It was strategy. I was pruning noise so you could finally hear the faint rhythm of my timing. Because this hour required a version of you that could stand under weight without collapsing, speak truth without compromise, and carry light without arrogance. You couldn't become that while surrounded by distraction. So I pulled you away. And though you misread the withdrawal, I never stopped watching. Even your quiet tears became signals that told heaven they are still alive, still believing, still breathing through the ache. Each sigh drew me closer. Every moment you fought despair proved that the refining was working. And now, as this season shifts, you will understand what I meant when I said, I go before you. I've already prepared the environment you're stepping into. The people who will meet you next have been softened by my hand. The terrain that once resisted you hath been tilled for your arrival. You were not forgotten in the background. You were being sharpened offstage. And now the curtain is lifting. You will move in grace that feels unfamiliar because it's been waiting for your unveiling. What once drained you will now recognize your authority. The same spaces that overlooked you will now request your presence. But this time, you'll carry peace instead of pressure. You'll walk with quiet strength instead of desperation. Because hiddenness taught you that visibility is not validation, it's assignment. You no longer need applause to feel alive. You only need alignment. And alignment is exactly what this hour holds. I preserve you for a moment when compromise would have been costly, for a time when truth would carry weight, for an era where endurance would become evidence of my hand. Others rushed ahead, but they weren't built for this timing. Your rhythm matches what heaven is releasing right now. The angel sent to you carries confirmation of that preservation. It doesn't come to explain why you were hidden, it comes to announce that the season of concealment has ended. I am unveiling you, not to prove a point, but to fulfill a purpose. You will no longer question why I kept you unseen. You'll see that every lonely road was carving capacity for this assignment. You will step into rooms prepared while you thought nothing was happening. You will find that the waiting purified your motives, and the silence strengthened your hearing. And as you move forward, you'll realize I never left. I just waited until you could walk beside me without needing the world to notice. Now the moment has come. What I preserved is ready to be revealed, and what I reveal can never again be hidden. You saw things crumble that you thought would last forever. You watched foundations give way beneath dreams you built with trembling hope. You stood in the aftermath of loss, surrounded by the dust of what used to hold meaning, wondering why I allowed it to fall if I had blessed it in the first place. But hear me now. I let it collapse not to destroy you, but to reconstruct something that could sustain what I am now releasing. What broke apart wasn't wasted, it was exposed. There were cracks hidden beneath your strength, motives mingled with exhaustion, attachments that diluted your focus. I could not build the eternal on temporary scaffolding, so I let the wind do what your will would not. It cleared the weak so that the real could rise. You wept because you thought you were watching endings, but you were witnessing excavation. I dug beneath what was visible because what I'm constructing and you must outlive seasons. The pain wasn't demolition, it was redesign. I am rebuilding, but not according to the old pattern. This time, every piece will line with purpose, not pressure. Every wall will be sealed with truth, not approval. Every corner will echo with peace, not striving. You won't have to fight to keep it standing. I'll be the strength in its frame. What's rising from the ruins will not carry the fragility of the former, it will be marked by permanence. Because this time, the blueprint is divine, not borrowed. I've removed every dependency that once defined you, every influence that whispered fear into your foundations. You thought I forgot the work you invested, but I am preserving what was pure and discarding what was poison. I'm not rebuilding from memory. I'm building from revelation. That's why it feels unfamiliar, it's supposed to. I'm creating something that mirrors heaven's architecture, not human expectation. The pain you endured taught you to discern what truly matters, and that discernment is now the cornerstone of this new beginning. You won't repeat what broke you. You'll recognize counterfeit structures before they even take shape. And because you've learned to surrender plans instead of control them, The rebuilding will be quicker than the breaking. What took years to construct before will now rise in moments, because obedience has replaced striving. And this new thing, this holy structure of destiny, will not crumble when storms return. It will stand, because I am the builder and the foundation at once. The weight of my glory will rest upon it, not to crush but to confirm that it's mine. The people connected to it will be different too. I've sifted your circle. I've removed the ones who couldn't carry the next season's pressure. What's forming now will attract alignment, not competition. It will draw intercessors, not spectators. Those who come will build with you, not drain from you. They will recognize that what's rising is sacred, and as it stands tall, the memory of what collapsed will no longer sting, it will testify. You'll look back at what you lost and see it as the soil that made this structure possible. You'll realize I didn't take something from you. I took something off you. I removed the weight of what couldn't hold your calling, so I could replace it with what reflects my covenant. You will no longer fear collapse, because you will know the foundation can't be shaken when I lay it myself. What's coming is not fragile, it's fortified. It will last through generations, carry fruit through droughts, and echo through eternity. You'll see the beauty of my rebuilding. It doesn't restore to what was. It redefines what can be. And when you stand within it, you will understand every tear was a stone, every delay was mortar, every prayer was design. The rebuilding is almost complete. Step forward, it's time to dwell in what was worth the breaking. You felt the trembling under your feet and assumed it was instability, but this shaking is not collapse, it's construction. The soil of your life is being rearranged to carry a structure far greater than anything you have stood upon before. The vibrations you sense are not warnings. They are confirmations that heaven's foundations are being lowered into the depth of your calling. I am settling what has long floated in uncertainty. I am rooting what once wandered. Every invisible movement you felt, those restless nights, those sudden stirrings in your spirit, that pressure you couldn't explain, has been the sound of alignment taking place beneath you. Destiny does not rest on shallow ground. It requires depth. And so I've allowed the shaking to loosen what could not stay, to release the old anchors that kept you tied to lesser terrain. You are not losing balance. You are finding stability on a new level. What is happening now is not random. It is the manifestation of every seed you planted when no one was looking. The prayers you buried years ago are pushing up through the soil. The promises you thought expired are stirring like roots finding water again. I'm connecting the fragments of your past with the framework of your future. This ground is not unfamiliar, it's transformed. What used to reject growth will now nourish it. The dust that once testified of disappointment is becoming fertile under my command. You will soon notice that what once drained you will start feeding you. People who once misunderstood you will have no choice but to witness what I establish through you. Because when I anchor destiny, no opposition can uproot it. Do not fear the motion. It may feel like everything is moving beneath you, but I am the one orchestrating the rhythm. The cracks you see are not failures, they are the openings where my glory seeps in. The weight you feel is not burden, it's foundation settling into place. You prayed for permanence. This is how I answer. I solidify purpose through pressure. I fortify calling through shaking. What emerges afterward cannot be shaken again. You are stepping into unshakable footing, into terrain where your voice will carry weight, where your faith will command atmosphere, where your obedience will echo long after you've spoken. Every area that once wobbled is being reinforced by my word. Every season that once felt uncertain is now locking into divine alignment. I am securing your steps so that no storm can undo what I am building through you. This is why everything around you feels different. It's not chaos, it's calibration. The Spirit is tightening what was loose, stabilizing what was unguarded, and merging layers of purpose you didn't know were connected. Soon you will stand and realize that the movement beneath you wasn't meant to scare you, it was meant to plant you deeper than before. Because destiny cannot hover, it must rest. And now, it's resting on you. When the shaking stops, you'll notice the peace that follows will not be fleeting, it will be permanent. The same ground that once broke beneath disappointment will now hold miracles. The same atmosphere that carried confusion will now carry clarity. The foundation being laid right now is not temporary, it's eternal. What's rising from this moment will carry the scent of permanence, the mark of heaven's hand, and the sound of completion. You will know it's me because when you stand again, you won't tremble. You'll feel anchored finally, deeply, unmovably anchored. And every fear that told you it was ending will realize it was only beginning. I am finishing what I started beneath you. And when the dust settles, you'll find yourself standing not on uncertainty, but on the blueprint I drew long before the storms came. The shaking with the sound of destiny taking root. The stillness that follows will be the sign that my promise has landed. Walk boldly now, the ground under you belongs to your calling. Amen.